ECB. Have you been complaining about negative interest rates?
Well, our bank hasn't been, but we are a sub-investment grade bank in a sub-investment grade economy where we actually are paying depositors to have their money with us and being able to charge reasonably large spreads in terms of the risk we take on the loan book. So it hasn't yet hit the periphery in the way in which it's hit the core. But it will come. I mean, the excess of liquidity and the inability to place it in much of Europe is causing significant pressures on banking models. So if you can't pay less than zero to a depositor, you have to carry that in your margins, which pressures your cost-income ratio, and you guys talked about it earlier on, and that puts pressure on your ability to make profits, which puts pressure on your valuation, which puts pressure on your capital raises. So there are very significant pressures, and it drives us towards, the question of whether banks in their current construct can survive and whether we need consolidation.
So will there be consolidation? It's one of the lines from Mario Draghi. I looked at the worst performing stock on the DAX is Deutsche Bank. Banks are down 25% this year. The Italian banks are getting pummeled. Consolidation, will it be forced through by regulators?
Well, I think regulators need to stand out of the way of consolidation. Consolidation in market is certainly...
So long as there's no crisis event.
Of course. But actually, a lot of the banks go bust nationally, and they are now regulated across 18 member states inside the European Union. And then, of course, there's the EBA sits across that with 28 member states. So what we have to make sure is that we can have something of resolution that works from the supranational perspective, but also allows commerce to occur. Naturally, if you've got disruption in the banking sector with fintech and various technologies coming along, you've got disruption in terms of our ability to have the model work by reducing leverage and having negative interest rates. All of that pressures whether a banking model can work in its current construct. So my view is that we have to see consolidation, not just in market, but across market. And we have to actually encourage it rather than stand in the way of it.
And does that need to include Germany then? Is that or Italy? They're parts of the European banking sphere that you look at and you say we need to see consolidation there.
Germany has a very competitive banking market and it has never been a particularly profitable zone. So you look at all markets across Europe, they all suffering the same basic issue, which is I think we are generally having too many banks and generally not having enough room for consolidation, because consolidation requires risk-taking, and risk-taking in today's environment, both from a managerial perspective and a supervisory perspective, is sort of off the cards.
When you look at, there is only one bank story in town at the moment, it is Deutsche Bank, the demolition on the equity side, the credit default swaps are rising. The CEO last night telling Bild help is out of the question, and in terms of capital it's not an issue. But when you look at Deutsche Bank, is it a personification of the profitability challenge for banking versus solvency, which was 2011, 2012, and that's a view that we had from our earlier CIO?
Look, I think that is a reasonable characterization of what Deutsche Bank is facing. I'm not an expert on Deutsche Bank, but when you have reduced leverage, when you have all of the changes in capital rules about what you can do and how profitably you can do it, when you have a very significant derivative book relying on a rating, when you have the challenges that all of the banking markets face, then they manifest themselves in a big universal bank such as Deutsche Bank. It's the one remaining significant large universal bank on the continent of Europe, and it is showing all of the signs and strains that have naturally occurred because of the last 10 years of changes in regulation, changes in liquidity, changes in leverage, changes in fiscal policy. And that's all coming to roost now in Deutsche.
Mario Draghi is in Berlin today. He wants to hand over the baton of attempts to stimulate the Eurozone economy from monetary policy to fiscal actors. He wants the Germans to do more, it seems, with their fiscal budgets. Is that something that you think the Eurozone economy needs right now? Does Germany need to spend more to boost the economy?
Well, taking interest rates to forever lows across all of the major currencies of the world has stopped the world sort of not growing, but it's only barely growing. And when you're at zero, there's nowhere else you can go other than marrying up monetary and fiscal policy in an organised way. And the central banks have very little room to go other than to encourage governments to do some fiscal stimulus, which may in fact be paid for by further sort of central bank balance sheet action.
John, can I ask you your view on negative rates in Europe? Your advice to the ECB members: stop this negative rate path, look towards Japan, target the yield curve. What would you call on Draghi to do in regards to rates and QE?
I think Draghi has done what he can do, given that he has a supranational role. The bond buying programs and the the nature in which monetary stimulus can occur is happening nationally